from Massachusetts reserves. The gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, if we want to help senior citizens, if we want to help the working class, we can make sure that the working class and seniors on a fixed income can actually pay their heating bills. According to Ipsos polling, 1 in 3 Americans have reported trouble affording gas in Biden's energy crisis. Almost 35% of Americans, over 40 million, use a gas stove, and the Democrats want to ban the gas stove. Let's talk about the economic pain that is coming to all Americans. Electricity prices are expected to rise over 11% this winter. Natural gas prices are expected to rise as much as 25% since last winter. About 47% of households use natural gas to heat their homes, by the way. Heating home oil prices are expected to rise as much as 45% since last winter. That's over 80% of homes in the Northeast that use heating oil. Regions that heavily depend on home heating oil, such as I dare say Massachusetts, they will pay an average bill of $2,354 extra due to the draconian measures on energy, the reckless, the radical policies of the left on energy production. So if we want to actually help these individuals like Republicans want to do, we can pass H.R. 1. But I also want to focus on the comment, who do we trust? We heard that refrain over and over from my good friend from Massachusetts. Well, I can tell you who we shouldn't trust. We shouldn't trust the so-called experts that the Democrats are infatuated with. Let's talk about some of the statements we've heard, some of the predictions from these so-called experts. Al Gore in 2006 said, and I quote, "If you look at the 10 hottest years ever measured, they've all occurred in the last 14 years, and the hottest of all was in 2005. Within the decade, there will be no more snows of Kilimanjaro," end quote. Again, he said that in 2006. Last time I checked, it was 2023, and we still had snow on Mount Kilimanjaro. Al Gore also said, and I quote, "The North Pole will be ice-free in the summer by 2013 because of man-made global warming," end quote. That was 2013. It's 2023. Another prediction that has not come true. John Kerry, the climate czar, in 2009, he said, and I quote, "You have sea ice, which is melting at a rate that the Arctic Ocean is now increasingly exposed to. In 5 years, scientists predict that we will have the first ice-free Arctic summer." Again, that was 2009. It's 2023. Last time I checked, there was still ice in the Arctic. Let's talk about Barack Obama and his predictions. In 2015, he said, and I quote, "No challenge poses a greater threat to the future generations than climate change," end quote. When he left office, let's not forget that this man bought beachfront property in Martha's Vineyard while having the audacity to tell us that we're facing rising sea levels due to climate change. And again, bought a beachside mansion in Martha's Vineyard. So spare me. And talking about the greatest threat, notice there was no mention of the CCP. Notice there was no mention of Russia, which in a debate with Republicans, when Republicans were pointing to the threat posed by Russia, Barack Obama said the 1980s want their foreign policy back. But let's talk about another so-called expert that the left loves to talk about, Greta Thunberg. In 2018, she tweeted, and I quote, "A top climate scientist is warning that climate change will wipe out all of humanity unless we stop using fossil fuels over the next 5 years," end quote. You know, conveniently, Greta Thunberg deleted that tweet this month. And why? It's because that was said in 2018. It's now 2023, 5 years later, and humanity is still around. But it's easy to say that, oh, the experts have just been wrong in the last few years, since the early 2000s. The so-called experts have been wrong on this topic since the 1960s. In 1969, the New York Times published a piece from Paul Ehrlich, and Paul Ehrlich said, the so-called expert, by the way, and I quote, "We must realize that unless we are extremely lucky, everybody will disappear in a cloud of blue steam in 20 years. Again, that was 1969. That didn't happen. Yet, as in 2023, Paul Ehrlich, I think he's like 90 years old, this man is still being published and still being held up as an expert on climate change and appearing on 60 Minutes telling us that we're all going to die. So spare me. I've got more quotes I could go on, but it's very clear who you should trust. The Republicans are the party of science. The Democrats are the party of political science. The Republicans are the party of chemistry. The Democrats are the party of alchemy. We're the party of astronomy. They're the party of astrology. The science is with us. With that, I yield 3 minutes to my good friend from the great state of Texas, fellow Rules Committee member, Chip Roy.